Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is nutrition, and the title is Where You Start Matters. Don't really know why I said that weirdly, but what this is in regards to is when you start a diet, and this could be a structured way of eating for any goal. So diets don't have to be just for fat loss. They can be for weight loss or fat loss, which are actually different things. They can be for maximum performance, maximum aesthetics. It can be to actually gain weight. So there are various reasons why people will diet. Diet is just a term for structured eating. So you're actually eating for a goal or towards a goal. You're eating with structures and rules. You're eating on purpose, okay? So when you start a diet, it's important to know and consider where you're starting from. So an example of this is I had someone recently reach out, and I was helping them towards a performance-based goal. However, we were also going to do some fat loss. So the fat loss was in relation to improving their performance, but more so they just wanted to kind of look better, feel better, that kind of thing. So along the way, I asked them questions about their training and got ideas for way of structuring some exercise programming for their performance goals. And then I said, hey, can you send me what you eat every day? Just, a good breakdown of kind of meal times, usual food selections, and then I'll help you write a diet plan. And then they said, that's fine. Just go ahead and write me one. And I replied back like, I can't do that. Like, you need to actually tell me what you're doing. And they wrote back, no, it's fine. I don't really do anything consistent. Just write me what you want me to do. So I had to reply back, no, I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. You actually have to tell me, okay, what you were currently doing as a regular basis of habit. And after some emailing back and forth, they told me real quick blurb about something, but at least gave me somewhere to start. So why was I being a pain in the ass? Okay, why did I force them to send me something? It wasn't because I just wanted to kind of force any issue. So sometimes people are embarrassed to write what they eat because they eat kind of poorly. Or there's really nothing they do that's overly consistent. So they feel like, why even send it if it's different every day? And all of that is actually necessary for me to know. And then why is what we're going to talk about today. So why was I being a butthead, and why couldn't I just send them a diet? And there are a million reasons why, but I wanted to kind of just go through some quick examples just to give people some corrective thinking or food for thought, and give you something to consider as to why when you start a diet, it is extremely important that you consider who or where that diet is written for in terms of like where a person would start. So oftentimes when we think of like fat loss diets, overwhelmingly most diets are written based on the belief that you're overweight because you overeat. And holy freaking crap, is that not actually the case? So overwhelmingly most often when I see people, they've already started efforts on their own and they're actually severely under eating. And that is actually causing more of the issue than anything. They're under eating and they're ridiculously inconsistent. So it's not actually caloric reduction as much as it is just getting some damn consistency to their efforts. That is actually what's needed to make them have progress. So most diets are actually written for the wrong place for people to start. And that's often why most diets fail. Okay? So let's give it some examples. So if somebody is coming from under eating, and we've talked about in the past podcast why under eating is a big issue. Okay, you can actually eat too little of calories in the sense that it'll actually prevent you from losing body fat because you're actually eating too little. And again, people think they're overweight because they're actually not, they're eating too much, when often there are cases where people are overweight because they're eating too little. So this is podcast 426, which is a pretty recent one, that we discussed why eating less isn't good for fat loss. So you can learn more about that from podcast 426, titled Why Eating Less Isn't Good for Fat Loss. So why it isn't good is if somebody's coming from under eating and they say, just write me a diet. Like what I'm doing now isn't working, I need help. Can you help me? Just write me a diet. Well, if you're coming from under eating, that means that your body has a slow metabolism. So when we reduce our calories, our body adapts to that reduction of calories by reducing its caloric requirement, its caloric need. So it'll reduce the processes it does every day. It'll modify what it does every day to require less calories from food since you're not eating as many calories from your food. So the body actually slows down the processes to adapt to the lower caloric amount of food. So let's say, for example, somebody's only eating 1,200 calories. But if you were to use like nutrition calculators that'll tell you, okay, for your body size and shape and blah, 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 for you to lose weight, you need to eat 1,600 calories. The person's like, well, what the hell? I'm eating 1,200. Why am I not losing weight? I'm eating less than what that calculation says. Why isn't it working? And the reason why is because you're actually eating too less. You're eating too little. And that's actually making the body fat that you have extremely important to the body, okay? And because you're eating so little, the body's actually slowing down all of its processes. So for me to know that, for me to write a diet for somebody, if they're coming from a diet of, say, eating 2,400 calories, and it's a simple just caloric reduction down to, say, 2,200 calories or 2,100 calories, and that'll help them lose weight. Then maybe we reduce to 1,900 or 1,800, and that helps them lose weight. So that's the typical way most people think diets work. But that's only if you're overeating. If you're under eating, okay, and you do those calculations and you figure out, like on MyFitnessPal and stuff like that, that you're supposed to be eating 1,600, but you've previously been eating 1,200, you'll actually gain weight if you were to start taking that recommendation. So what needs to be done then in cases like that is caloric intake per day needs to be increased very slowly over time, and there needs to be an increase of muscular damage in training. What that's going to allow your body to do is to rebuild its metabolism and learn how to burn more calories at rest. So therefore you can eat more calories while actually still losing weight. So in this process, I've helped people, be able to eat 600, 800 calories more on resting and not gain weight, to actually be leaner. So you can actually eat more and lose weight when you know where you're starting from. If you know that when you're starting from under eating, then you know you have to rebuild the person's metabolism. Also, if the person is under eating, then you know their body's in a stressed state. They probably have high cortisol, they're going to have high anxiety, and kind of internal stress, meaning they're going to be slow to respond to the diet. So knowing that means I can write the diet in smaller steps, and I can prepare the person and say, listen, you're going to take about 2 weeks, and we're actually just going to have to establish healthiness. So in the next 2 weeks, you might gain 2 pounds. But in the 4 weeks after that, you might take those 2 pounds back off. And all of a sudden, yeah, you're not going to have much of a weight difference, but you're going to feel better energy throughout the day. And you're actually going to be able to eat more calories, even though you're going to weigh the same. So you have to get rid of the stress in their body, knowing that they're coming from a stressed state. Also, from getting them to send you what they're doing, okay, where a person's starting from, it lets me as a nutritionist kind of see what's their biggest issue, what's their most common mistake. So again, most diets are written with the assumption that calories, caloric intake, is the mistake. When actually it's just maybe meal timing. Maybe you're eating your calories at the wrong time. And not a maybe, because that's absolutely most people, okay, is they deem themselves to be too busy during the day, and then they overeat at night. So they undereat when they're most active, they overeat when they're less active. That's what most people do. If you were to take the same amount of calories they're eating per day, push more of the calories when they're more active and less of the calories when they're less active, they'll actually be leaner at the exact same caloric intake. So you don't even need to reduce calories, you just need to change around the meal timing. So knowing where a person's starting and knowing that that's their mistake, not the amount of caloric intake, but the amount, like the timing of their calories. That would allow me to write a diet that doesn't automatically assume there has to be a caloric reduction, which will reduce energy, reduce mood, reduce enjoyment of life, okay? So you can actually just take their calories, rearrange their current calories, have them feel better and look leaner, okay? Also, caloric inconsistency. So often the person is eating the right amount of calories, but they're ridiculously inconsistent. So they go 2 days of under eating, 1 day of overeating. Then another day they go under eating, then the next day they go out with friends and they overeat. So it's just a chronic cycling back and forth, up and down, back and forth, okay, of calories. So if you can get their calories to be more consistent, even without a reduction, just more consistency in calories, that'll help them again feel better and look leaner. Then also, like we said, there's the mistake of under eating versus overeating. So there are cases where people overeat, of course, but overwhelmingly, most people, by the time I get a hold of them, they're under eating. And this is even true of athletes. So I've worked with a ton of CrossFit athletes, a ton of people who want to have maximal aesthetics, meaning they want to be lean but build muscle. And in those cases, those people are usually severely under eating. So we feed our CrossFit athletes better meal timing, better quality of food, and all of a sudden they get leaner and their performance goes sky high. So they were holding themselves back because they were mismanaging their fuel. Then for aesthetics, somebody's going to feel kind of like soft, not quite as hard as they expected, but yet they worked their ass off. What's going on? And the case usually is they're under eating. So they need to eat healthier foods and they need to eat a shit ton of them. Okay? And that's actually going to help them become harder and drier and actually build more muscle rather than get fat, which is what their fear is. So seeing what they're starting with lets me see, is their metabolism already compromised and slowed? Do we need to rebuild the metabolism? Also lets me see where the state of stress is for their body. Do we need to rebuild their body in terms of resiliency before we actually start into the harshness of the diet? And it lets me see where their most common mistake is. So rather than automatically assuming it's a caloric reduction, do we instead have to look at meal timing or meal consistency, under eating versus overeating? Like, what do we need to look at? And it isn't always calorie reduction. Okay? So real quick examples is I had one person who needed help, and she was actually under eating. She wasn't eating enough, and she was eating too inconsistently. So she was eating a lot when she was off work because she was probably home, a little bit depressed, a little bit sad because she was having struggles with work at the time. But she was under eating when she was active, overeating when she was inactive. I had another athlete, okay, powerlifting athlete who also wants to be aesthetically maximized. So he wants six-pack abs and be strong. And he's actually under eating. So he's eating every 2 or 3 hours. He's eating every day. He's eating a good amount, but it's not structured perfectly around the training. And he's actually eating too cleanly in terms of caloric intake post-training. So there needs to be a bigger caloric surplus post-training to maximize the results, the adaptation results from the training. So that's actually something we had to do recently with somebody who's a strength athlete plus kind of aesthetics, is we had to get them to eat more post-training, but not like pizza and ice cream and bullshit food. So more in terms of healthy carbs like rice, potatoes, things like that. Eat more meat, okay? Eat some red meat that has some fats in it. So that way they can actually have calories around for longer, so their body has a constant supply of something it can build tissues with and adapt from the training with. Then I had somebody the other day, male, older male, just kind of wasn't eating enough during the day, overeating at night, wasn't really paying attention to the quality of food or the type of food. So they were eating kind of what they felt was like the right amounts per meal, but some of the meals they were having fried chicken, some of the meals they were having, like just various types of food selections. So if we cleaned up their food selections, they were automatically going to feel better energy and they're going to be leaner even without a calorie reduction, as much as we just needed to change what it was that they were eating. So those are just some quick real examples. So where they start, okay, where someone starts is what determines our first steps. So the process in which we go through setting up a diet is always the same. So we talk about this in podcast 41, Diet Right, What Matters Most, is that the top components of a healthy diet, and this is again a diet for fat loss, weight gain, performance maximization, aesthetics maximization, but the top components of a diet, okay, is number one, calories. That's the first thing you have to establish to be correct. whether that's actually increasing calories because they're under eating, whether it's normalizing calories because they're too inconsistent, or whether it's actually reducing calories because they actually maybe are overeating. But calories is the first thing you have to get in place. And sometimes that requires using meal timing and meal frequency, which is actually a third component. So listen to podcast 41, but that tells you that calories is most important. Protein is second most important in terms of successful diets. Third most important is meal timing and frequency. Fourth most important is specific food choices, like whether they're having sweet potato or white bread versus wheat bread, stuff like that. And then fifth most important is everything else, like supplements and all the other crazy shit people think of, whether food's organic or not, things like that. So the process in which what you would look at is always the same. You always look at calories first, protein second, meal timing and frequency, which actually is usually tied in with calorie consistency. And then there's specific food choices. So for example, before a workout, is someone eating the correct type of fuel? So 30, 40 minutes before the workout, are they eating carbohydrates, which will give them the best fuel, or are they eating fats, which is going to make them feel shitty and no energy and a big clump of food in their belly when they're trying to work out? So specific food choices actually has to do with more so how you feel during your diet than actually the diet results. So that's the thing, is the process is always the same that we look at per person, but where each person starts or how they apply that process to their specific life and their specific situation is actually quite a bit different. So that's where like people like me have jobs, okay, is because we know where we need to go, but how do I get there from here? That's where a nutritionist comes into play and can help. Now, you can do this on your own, okay? So we give the podcast of what you can do. It's podcast number 41. It tells you what's most important. It tells you that calories is number one. Podcast 153 then tells you how to figure out how many calories you need, okay? We also learned that protein is the second most important, okay? And podcast 33 tells us how much protein do we need. So we give you the answers of how to do that. But it is difficult in the sense that it is a combination of maybe 2 or 3 hours worth of podcasts. And there may be a challenge of, okay, I know meal timing is important. I know I need to eat more when I'm more busy, but how the hell do I fit food in? Okay? So there is difficulties in setting up correct eating. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. There's a shit ton of things in life that are difficult that we absolutely must do. Okay? And that's nutrition is absolutely one of them. How you eat determines not only like what you look like in your blood health, it determines how you feel. So we can feel good every day, good energy. We can feel happier. We can feel properly fueled if we eat correctly. Or we can feel miserable, we can feel no energy, we can feel tired and fatigued all day. Okay, gassy, bloated, digestive stress because we're eating the wrong things. So, where you start your diet absolutely matters. Absolutely matters. Okay, so before you start a diet, consider, is this written to start where I am coming from? Okay, is this written to start from where I am? Is where I am correct to start this diet? Okay, whatever form of asking yourself that question you want to give. Okay, is this written to start from where I am? How do you know? Is listen to podcast 41 and then listen to the podcasts that are tied in with those top components. Now, we'll have those podcasts written in the kind of podcast description. We'll have them referenced so you can check those out. And you can go through this process on your own and set it up correctly on your own. That's the whole point of why I started these podcasts, was so that people could help themselves. Now, of course, being a nutritionist and having a business and stuff, do I help people for money? Yeah. So if you want help with that, we're always happy to help. Now, we can even help you without money, okay? So if you're setting up the process yourself, you've listened to the podcast, but you have some questions, email us, brunerandjim@gmail.com. We'll help kind of nudge you and guide you along the pathway. If you would like some personalized programming to kind of know where, like if you've started diets and it just never really seems to work and you're always having to start a new diet, and you can't just seem to figure out why they aren't working. It might be because the diets you're doing aren't written from where you're at. Okay? Where you are now is not correct for what that diet is written for. So if you need help with that, if you would like to kind of put an end to that cycle, email us. Our email is brutalironjim@gmail.com, and we'll help you create a personalized program that is written exactly from where you are right now. Okay? We can help you rebuild your metabolism. We can help you recover from dietary yo-yoing stress. We can help you take control and charge of your body, your life, your happiness. Okay? So, this was some food for thought. Just recognize that not all diets are written from exactly where you are now. And where you start absolutely does matter. Okay? It'll determine how you apply the rules that everyone must apply, but how you do it personal to your needs. Cool. Okay, so check out those podcasts that are going to be referenced in the description and learn more about how you can get control over your nutrition and finally get the freaking results that you're putting in the effort for. Okay, cool. So if you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. The more people we help, the happier the world will be. Also, if you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Brutal Iron Gym. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. The podcast is for you, so we want to know what you want to learn about. You can tell us at our email at brutalironjim@gmail.com. Cool. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening. And thank you for watching.